So we are now at part 10 of our Viking chair build. For part 10, I'm going to show you the router table and the router that sits underneath the router table. In this shop we have 3 router tables, one with a wooden base, one with a red metal base, and one with a blue base. And we commonly will set them up for the different classes that are running through the shop, or if we have a very big project that needs multiple bits set up, we'll use them for that purpose as well. The one in the middle here has a nice fence which we can hook up with a dust extraction or a vacuum in this case. And so if we have something that's creating a lot of dust, we'll use that router table. But for this demonstration, I'm going to show you this router table. So what does a router table do? Or what does a router do? Well, a router can do many different things depending on the router bit that you put inside and the setup of your table or your router. For us, it's going to be super simple. We're going to router the edge of our product or our project, just the edges all the way around so that they're rounded over. So we're going to be using a 1/4 round bit set up on this table. I actually have it set up for you to use right away. So that's what we're going to do. So it's simple, and it's very common in the shop to use a 1/4 inch round over bit just to soften that edge up. But what can we do? Well, there's actually a lot of different bits that we can use. Here is a bit set that I had purchased. And this bit set, for example, has 66 bits in it. Can you see that? And those bits do a whole bunch of different things. Some of them are for decorative edges, and some of them are perhaps for cutting dovetails, or maybe I want to cut a slot inside my wood. The sky's the limit with the router, depending on what you're going to use or what you're going to need it for. So the 1/4 inch round over that we're using looks like this. So this round over right here is what we're going to use, and you're going to see on it here that it has a carbide edge, 2 of them. That's what does your cutting. It has a bearing on it, and this bearing rides along the edge of your wood so that you can only go so far into your wood. If you take a look at this, when I'm routering, it's going to just, that bearing is just going to run just on that edge, just like that, as this is spinning, okay? And then it will only allow you to go so far. Some router bits don't have a bearing on them. And if they don't have a bearing on them, let's pull that one out here. This big one here, for example, doesn't have a bearing on the end. Now, if it doesn't have a bearing, then what you want to do is set up a fence, unless you're going to freehand it, which, well, if it's artistic, might work out good for you. So router bits can have a bearing or no bearing. Also, the shaft on the router bit, good router bits will generally have this 1/2 inch shaft, a nice thick shaft, whereas some lower quality ones that are a little bit cheaper have a 1/4 inch shaft. So you can see the difference. There's a 1/4 inch shaft and a 1/2 inch shaft. Now, sometimes the bit is so small you have to use a 1/2 inch shaft or a 1/4 inch shaft, but often you'll find your better bits will have that nice thick shaft so that the shaft doesn't break when you're routering. And I have had the shaft break before. So that's just an idea of what a router bit is. So the router table itself, we have 3 of them. Now, although they're all different, we've put the same router inside every single table or underneath every table. This table's nice because I can just turn it on and off with a switch, a little light switch that we have here. Whereas these, I will actually have to toggle them on and off with the machine itself, with the router. So this is what the motor and what the whole router looks like right there. Okay, so we have, basically the motor is this section right here. See inside it, you have a handle. So if we were using this without a router table, which we can do, we have a handle. And then we have the base right here. And the base is adjustable. Just like it is in the router table, I can take and loosen this, unclamp that, and I can spin it higher or lower. And you can see on this one has no bearing on it, by the way. It's kind of a dado bit. And you can see as I spin it, it gets higher and lower. So these are really simple to adjust. So once I have my height that I want, I just clamp this down. We're good to go. We've got our height. This one's already set up so that the carbides are flush with the top of the table, or in line with the top of the table. So this is good to go. Now this, if you listen to it, you can probably get a sense of how deadly this can be. So even though it's a small little bit in there, it runs at a very high RPM and it won't stop. In fact, I've heard stories of students, not in the school, not with under my supervision, but in other places, getting their hair caught in the machine. And let me tell you, that wouldn't be a good sight. Make sure hair is tied back. Any loose clothing, again, just be shop safe, just like what we talked about in those first few videos. No loose anything. Safety glasses is extremely important. And on this machine, we want to keep our fingers, again, that 2 inches away, about that far from the cutter head. So what we do is we use these hold downs. Now these hold downs have some rubber on them. Now you can see they've been cut up a little bit. It's a lot better than if we're going to cut up your hands. And these, we can use 1 or we can use 2, and you can see that they're angled. So we want to, when we're putting our hand on them, we want to put them on so that it's angled back towards, not over top of the router bit. So they're angled for a reason. Keep your hands away from the bit. Now for this one, I'm probably going to have a handle over here on the side, and then I'm going to use the other one to hold the project down. So I'm going to hold it like this, and then I'm going to move against the direction of the cutter head. So the cutter head turns in a counterclockwise direction. So it's turning like this. And because it's turning like that, you want to go against the cutter head direction. So you want to go from right to left, no matter where you're standing with the machine. If you're standing over there, it's from right to left, over here, or over there. You're going against the direction of the cutter head. Now for inside circles, that changes because you're going the opposite direction. But for outside, from right to left, just like that. Now because it has a bearing on it, you can do a little bit at a time and stop and reposition and do a little bit more and reposition. It's no big deal. You don't have to do it all in one shot. When I turn this on and start routering, I'll give you an example of what that'll look like. Okay? You don't want to push super fast because the machine has to do its job. You have to let it spin and do its job. You don't want to go too slow because it might burn, perhaps. And what else can I tell you about this? Probably about it for now. Let's turn it on and maybe I'll think of something else to tell you. Vents aren't hooked up to this unless you're on that one, then the vacuum's on, so we're not going to worry about vents right now. This is a pretty noisy and dusty machine. So that's one more thing I can tell you. Noise. Put on some earmuffs. Oh, none back there. There's some back there. When you're using this machine, or asks for some of those earplugs, and that would save your hearing. Again, I normally put them in and leave them in all class, and you can hear other people just fine. It just dulls the sound of the machine. So we're going to turn that on, let it get up to speed, and go from right to left and do a little bit of routering. To show you the result. Now this is not a brand new blade, it's maybe a little bit dull, so I'm getting a bit of burning, plus this is hardwood, but you can see what's happening here. I'm taking that and I'm just rounding over that corner, just like that. And you saw here, I went in and I made those fancy little marks right there. Now that was on purpose. I just wanted to show you that if you make a mistake and you don't press hard enough, you just go over top of that area again and it'll just disappear. Remember, that bearing will only let you go so far in. It's really a nice nice device for that, because for you guys, because it's hard to make a mistake. If you hear a chipping sound as well, you're going to want to stop, and you're going to want to do stops. Stop and do stops. So what that means is the board will sometimes chip out on you with long strips of wood, and you can prevent that from happening by just pushing in, and then that creates stops, which basically only allow your chip out to happen to the next stop. Okay, so if that happens, I'll explain a little bit better. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does, and it's just something we can do to fix the problem. Okay, let's do some more. So once I have one side done, okay, one face is done, I can double check and see if I need to do a little bit more here or there. And it looks like I did a pretty good job, but I can take and I can flip it over and do the other side, the other face. So it was like this, and now I can go like this, exactly the same way. Let's get it done. And that looks good too. So I'm going to proceed to the seat. And, you could choose which edges you want to router. In fact, kind of humming and hawing about doing this. I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm going to leave that nice and sharp because that's going to sit against the back. But everything else, especially this area right here, that's the part I'm sitting on, I want to do that. This part back here and the back won't hurt to do that as well. It's going through a square slot. We're going to round the corners. Maybe it won't fit perfectly as it did before, but it's going to be so much nicer to handle not having those sharp edges. But I think I'm going to just leave these ones sharp and then just soften them later with the palm sanders. Let's try that out. Okay, so you saw how loud that was, or you heard how loud that was, but you can see how nice that turned out. See those beautiful edges? I like that. Now there is burning on here, but it's not excessive. Here's some, this is actually from the table saw, but there's some burning on the sides from the router. Not bad for a router bit that's gone through many students. I just cleaned off the pitch off of it with just some, really just soap and water works good, but you can buy pitch off to clean the bits before you use them. And that's how you round over your edges. Again, you can use a router for so many things. It's a great tool to have in your shop. It's just one more tool in your bag of tricks for when you're building stuff. So let's see if this fits together still. There it does. It does, of course it does. There we have it. And it looks nice, it feels nice. We just have to do a final sanding on this. So we are going to take in our next part 11 of the series, I'm going to show you how to use palm sanders. And not only how to use palm sanders, because they're pretty easy to use, but how to load the sandpaper on them. That's a little bit tricky, especially for all the different sanders that we have here. So we're going to do that in our next part of the series. I don't think we're going to have time to apply a finish to it this year, this school year, but we'll at least get it sanded. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed. Come back again for part 11. Thanks for watching.